My name is Jonathan, and I'm going to be talking about influencer marketing. And before I do, I want to show you a video. It's about 2 minutes, and it's a video that was shot at a music festival in 2009 at a music festival called Sasquatch. And I think it frames what I'm going to be talking about in an interesting way. So hopefully this will play for me. So, hope that stops playing. So, what I like about that video, right, it was a video that was shot a couple of years ago and made very famous by a guy called Derek Silvers, who's a writer. And he likens that video kind of the perfect way to build a movement, right? You've got that first guy, potential nut job, going out there dancing. People don't know what he's doing. But critically, he gets that first follower. That first follower comes on, and the leader, that first guy dancing, he engages them in a very kind of positive way. They interact, they engage, they mimic each other. And then a third person joins, and as we know, 3 is a crowd, and it attracts attention. It's somewhat newsworthy. So more and more people join, the momentum is built, there is a tipping point where it turns into a bit of a movement in that moment at that event. And that's really kind of the concept of influencer marketing. So when I talk about an influencer, I'm referring to a YouTube star, or a Twitter star, or an Instagram star. And a typical YouTuber who's considered to be a digital influencer, they actually started their YouTube channels about 5 or 6 years ago. And they were like that first guy dancing. They were just putting themselves out there. They were talking about passions of theirs online. They were expressing their feelings. They were really kind of making themselves vulnerable on YouTube, and they got their first follower, they got their 10th follower. And now, the biggest YouTuber in the world, a guy called PewDiePie, who I'll be referencing later, he has 44 million subscribers to his YouTube channel alone. But the YouTubers don't just YouTube, now they're right across the entire social web. They're on Twitter, they're on Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, Vine, Snapchat. So much so that the biggest influencers have audiences of over 100 million fans. And if you think about that, right? Think about the biggest networks in the States, ABC, NBC. They're broadcasting their shows, and they're not getting 100 million people who are opting into watching their content every week, but these influencers are. And as we all know, we're all marketers, we're all brand people, we're all agency people. Where there's eyeballs, there's got to be, that's where you want your brand to be, right? So the concept of influencer marketing, the term influencer marketing, it's a euphemistic term for word of mouth. Right? But it's been accelerated by technology, and it's been accelerated by the growth of the social web and of social media. And what's interesting from a brand perspective and from a media agency perspective is that certainly in the States where I'm based and where I'm living, the media plans going out the doors now on behalf of brands, it's not a question of if influencer marketing is going to be on a media plan. It's a question of how many influencers are going to be used, what kind of content they're going to create, where is the content going to be distributed. So we're at this really interesting point where the eyeballs are there, the engagement is there, and that's where brands are playing. And there's a couple of reasons that influencer marketing is popping right now, and that's not to say that it hasn't been popular for a long time, it has, and I will talk about that. But there's 3 reasons why influencer marketing is so buzzy, right? Firstly, TV viewership is down. Since 2012, year-on-year viewership of television, linear television, it's down 4% every year. On your devices, on your Macs, on your computers, on your laptops, you may be using ad blocking. In fact, in the States, 45 million people are blocking digital ads from being seen. So that's the pre-roll, display, banners, they're not coming on the screens, and ad skipping. So when you're watching X Factor or Coronation Street with DVR, I'm skipping the ads, and I assume most other people are too. So that's 3 reasons that the scale and the reach of a TV ad, while yes, it is still effective and definitely has a place at the table or as part of your media mix, that's why influencer marketing is rising, because of the context of the broader communications landscape. But as I said, influencer marketing's been around for a long time, right? It actually started in the 1760s, believe it or not, with the royal family. They endorsed Wedgwood pottery at the time. They put their name and likeness and endorsed it. Cut to a couple 100 years later, and we had the first sports endorsement by an athlete. This guy, his name's Honus Wagner. He's with the Pittsburgh baseball team, and his name and likeness was used on tobacco brands. It was used on cigarette brands. It was used on razor blade brands. And even I Love Lucy, you see in the 1950s, I Love Lucy was actually paid for by a tobacco company. So this isn't anything that's new necessarily, but it's something that's been accelerated in the last 10 years since the birth and growth of YouTube. And you can see I put a $sign on my YouTube logo. And the reason is that YouTube, it's really the only social network that pays its creators. So there's actually an incentive to upload videos. So let me give you an example. If you decide to start a YouTube account, which the biggest digital influencers did 5-6 years ago, YouTube actually pay you money if you opt into the YouTube Partner Program. What that means is that when a brand like your brands, when you put a pre-roll before that YouTube video, of that media spend, you're paying Google or YouTube. 55% of that spend goes directly to the creator, and 45% goes to Google, which of course owns YouTube. So there's an incentive there beyond just sharing your passions and sharing your life on YouTube. So YouTubers started making a lot of money just from that bread and butter. That's before brand integrations, that's before custom content. And Michelle Phan in 2010, she became probably the most famous influencer out there. She's a beauty and fashion vlogger doing a lot of how-to tips, and Lancome tapped her in 2010 to be their first digital video ambassador. So she was up against big celebrities, big supermodels, and then Michelle Phan was this, the next wave of celebrity. And last year was a really, really important and really, really interesting moment for influencer marketing, digital influencer marketing, when Variety magazine went out and they surveyed 1,500 teens across America. And they showed them 20 celebrities, 10 of which were traditional celebrities. So Katy Perry was there, Bruno Mars was there, Jennifer Lawrence was there, and they showed them 10 YouTube stars. They asked them a series of questions about familiarity, relevance, influence. Who are you likely to do what you're told by? Is it the celebrity or is it the influencer? The top 5 came back as all YouTube stars. YouTube stars that I hadn't even heard of, because they're only kind of famous to that 13 to 17-year-old demo. So really, really interesting in terms of how to influence behavior of this demographic. It's by using these influencers who are your best friend in your pocket, because they're across all of the social graph. Fullscreen and Maker, there's a lot. These companies show that there's a lot of money to be made in influencer marketing. So what they are, they're actually called multi-channel networks. And a multi-channel network is a company that aggregates YouTube channels and aggregates YouTube stars and represents the inventories, the media inventory on those properties or on those channels, but also helps the YouTuber grow. They're kind of like YouTube talent agencies, but they are becoming incredibly impressive media agencies in their own right. So Fullscreen and Maker both got acquired last year. Maker by Disney for between $500 and $1 billion, and Fullscreen by the Chernin Group, and WPP, for whom I ultimately work, is an investor with Fullscreen, and they're doing a great job for us right across all of the agencies. So when we think about influencers online, right, there's 6 main areas that I'm seeing pop in terms of what we call passion points or verticals. Beauty and fashion, gaming, music, unboxing, which is kind of crazy, is literally these guys get gifts and or not gifts, but technology products or beauty products, and they unbox them in real time, and they describe the unboxing process, and they review the products. We've got food and we've got lifestyle, but of course there's a long tail when it comes to the passion points and the verticals, right? You've got sports influencers, you've got technology influencers, you've got pretty much any interest or hobby you have, you can find on YouTube, I promise you. But that's the way we're kind of bucketing them. And in terms of people to know globally, you've got Zoella, big beauty fashion, kind of the big sister of YouTube to an extent. She just hit 10 million subscribers on YouTube alone. PewDiePie, very important to know about him in terms of best in class for an influencer marketer. He is a gamer, so he plays games online, and he reviews them and talks about them and gives cheat sheets and does play-alongs and does reaction videos. Really super authentic guy, doesn't try and be anything but exactly who he is, and he's very kind of eccentric, and his fans absolutely lap up everything he does. So if he says buy a game, that game goes to #1. Pentatonix in the music category, that's an important one, because they started off with a Sony record deal, Sony dropped them, they started releasing their music videos on YouTube only, and they built such a grassroots follower base across the social graph that they recently won a Grammy and were #1 on the Billboard. At the bottom, you've got Arcadius Cool, a really interesting father-son duo who are actually from Poland originally, moved to County Laois and review toys in real time. They've done deals with Lego and Kinder. What I think is really interesting about these guys is that the dad was an architect, and he's now making more money as a YouTuber than he ever did as an architect, so he's doing it full time. Happy Pear, these guys you probably know because I feel like they pop up everywhere as in the foods kind of space, breakfast shows and whatnot, but they are really growing online. And what's interesting, they don't have the most subscribers or followers, but they do have an incredibly engaged following base. So when they say something, they get likes, they get shares, they get subscribers, they get comments. And then these Sasone Jolies, these are a family from Cork who now live in the UK. They filmed everything from the birth of their child, and they release a video every single day about their lives. They've done brand deals with Fitbit, they've done brand deals with Kodak, and they're very influential for that young mother and young family audience. And like I just spoke about engagement, that's something to really consider when you're considering working with influencers at all, right? So in terms of the celebrity ecosystem for brands and sponsorship deals with them, yeah, you've got the big boys like Beyonce and Cristiano Ronaldo, very expensive, have tremendous reach globally. Then you've got what we call the magic middle, which are these influencers. And the reason to use an influencer, it's to really go deep on that passion point or that vertical and really find a qualified audience who are incredibly engaged and listening to what that influencer tells them. And because the real talent of all of the influencers is their authenticity and being themselves. And the talent will not do a brand deal unless it resonates with their audience or if they believe in it or there's that credibility. So there's a big kind of famous case study where a brand used Katy Perry because they were trying to drive traffic to a website, and they used an influencer, a guy called Connor Franta. And Connor drove 3 times as much traffic to the website than Katy Perry did, and he was a lot cheaper, but because his audience were so rabid. And also, I put in you all are influencers to an extent. If you think about it, right, you have LinkedIn accounts, you have Twitter accounts, you have Facebook accounts, and your followers who've opted in, or your friends who've opted into connecting with you, that is your sphere of influence. So, don't forget that everyone is an influencer to an extent about something, but it's just about the level of influence and the kind of the nicheness of influence. That's kind of the interesting part. So, we've got a lot of brands in the room, right? And the reality is there's a lot of ways to dip your toes into this space. There's a lot of ways to get involved. And the first thing to note is that when working with an influencer, the influencer typically gets paid. They get paid money, they get paid by barter, so you can give them product. They can get paid to an extent by promising them promotion. So you do have to disclose. The influencer has to disclose if they are being paid by a brand. It's the new regulations in the States. I'm not sure exactly where it stands here, but it will come here eventually. And there's 3 ways to work with them. One is by creating custom content. Secondly is brand integrations, and thirdly is influencers at scale. So you can either contact the creator directly, you can contact them through the media agency, or the media agency can work with the multi-channel network, which represents the talent. Custom content is the splashy one, that's the sexy one. That's where you work with an influencer to create a big program that lives either on their YouTube channel, because you've got that guaranteed audience and that guaranteed distribution, or it can live on the owned and operated sites of the brand who's paying. I'll talk about that in a second more deeply. But brand integrations they're straight up product placements. So if there's a YouTuber who's making a beauty and fashion video every week and it's released on Wednesday at 3 p.m., you can give them suggested script or talking points if they believe in the product, and they will do that, and they craft their own version of what you want them to say as a brand. So there is that element around creative control. When working with an influencer, you do give up a certain element of creative control. Yes, there are reviews, and there's a review process to make sure the brand is satisfied, but it is that kind of jumping off the cliff to an extent, and making sure everything is aligned up front about what they can say, what they can't say, and then influencers at scale. So this is a little bit more tricky, but basically it's finding that, let's stick with beauty and fashion, it's finding 15 to 50 influencers in beauty and fashion who have an audience that you're going after from a demo perspective, and having them create 15 to 30-second pre-roll ads in their voice around your brand, and then those run on their Instagram page, their Facebook page, YouTube page, and oftentimes you can do a paid buy to promote that video through TrueView on YouTube or as pre-roll on YouTube, and really target that very specifically to your demo. We've seen it very, very successful campaigns using that. And the process typically looks like this, right? You've got your brand reach out to the influencer. There's a lot of influencer identification. That's sort of the main challenge, I would say, finding the right influencer, because there's just so many. Not everyone can get a PewDiePie or a Michelle Phan or a Zoella. The influencer then works with you because they know their audience better than anyone. They know your audience better than anyone around what they're going to react well to, what they're not going to react well to. And if an influencer does a branded deal with you or with your brand, and it doesn't feel authentic, you see it in the comments below immediately. The sentiment is really negative and they're called out. So an influencer, the audience call them out and say, I followed you for 5 years, I believe everything you're saying, and now you're doing this brand, it doesn't feel authentic, it doesn't feel right. So you actually do see that. So the creators work with the brand and all of those different platforms to try and figure out what's the best format for Snapchat for that brand. They push out the brand message or that program to their audience organically, and then we'll typically do a paid buy to target it, and so you got that amplification so that it is hitting your target audience and that it is resonating in the right way. And what I want to do now is I want to show one more video of what we consider to be best in practice from a custom content program perspective. However, note, and I challenge you to watch the video and try and find the product placement, because it actually is very subtle, but there's a reason for that, and I'll talk about that in a second.
Strength to focus on a single target. I'll take it on with all I am. I always end what I have started. Don't stop until you're in my head. One destiny will align with me. You are the chosen one. The prophecy. Yeah. True, yeah. Looking in my eyes, you never wanna cross me. Sensei, cause he's the one that top me. Back down, not a master chop. Yo, anything you need, I can pass you rock. Fold the fun, like I never have another good enough on the run. And the blade so sharp, I can cut your hand. My arm like a tree trunk Superman. Man.
So the influencer there was a guy called JonathanCloonan, right? He was the main guy jumping off, and the brand in question was Speedstick Gear, which is a deodorant brand in the States. Basically, that video came about because Speedstick Gear were launching this new variant of their product. They looked at who their target audience was. Their target audience were 18 to 34-year-old guys. That was the demo. They had a psychographic of excitement, adventure. They wanted to push the edges. And they had a media consumption habit and a pattern that was that skewed incredibly digital. And not just digital, but online video. Not just online video, but they watched this guy, JonathanCloonan. JonathanCloonan is a stunt guy influencer on YouTube. He goes around the world making stunt videos like that with his friends. It's kind of the best job in the world, to an extent. And he's got a huge following base. And they, Speedstick came to him and said, what can we do? He said, I want to do the world's largest zip line in Panama City in 6 months' time. Speedstick said, perfect. We want to sponsor that. We want to get involved in that. We want to do a collaboration with you around that. But what's important to note about this, and for really the best custom content programs in influencer marketing, they don't just have that one video. They do have this tease, anchor, amplify program, right? It's more of a 360 program. So with this one, Devin, for 2 months before the video was released, Devin went to his Twitter account, of which he's got millions of fans, and said, I'm going to be doing a stunt in 2 months' time. Can you guess where it's going to be? And he then started dropping hints and tips. And he said, whoever guesses correctly both the stunt and the place gets to come along with me and gets to shoot behind the scene footage. His fandom, of which he has millions of followers online, they went crazy trying to figure out what it was. And one guy figured out where it was. He came to Panama, shot with Devin. Then we anchored the video on YouTube. So we actually launched that video. We launched the video on Devin's channel. It's got about 10 million organics right now. We did a behind-the-scenes campaign as well, and then we amplified that out right across the web through a lot of earned media. So we got picked up in the Wall Street Journal. It got picked up in Mashable. We paid other influencers to create reaction videos to him jumping off the building. And there was also a brand study at play to measure effectiveness. So Nielsen have a product called Visu, which is a pop-up survey. So the brand was able to measure the effectiveness from a brand awareness perspective, purchase intent perspective, consideration, to show that it worked. So really the point is that it's very 360, and it's because it's something that Devin would have produced anyway and his audience would have tuned into anyway, the opportunity to sponsor that just felt right, and it ultimately was the right thing to do. And that's the key point when it comes to really any of the influencers. You got to get your influencer story to match your brand story, and then create that authentic, engaging content, and that's brand safe. So working with an influencer who's brand safe is also key, because there's a lot who aren't, to be frank. And it pays off. So the reality is, advertising is hard to measure the effectiveness of, right, to a certain extent per medium. But influencer marketing is no different because it's so new in terms of the digital side of it. So last year, Burst Media partnered with eMarketer, and they went out and they looked at 400 influencer marketing campaigns that had run in a year and a half time period. Those campaigns had about 600 influencers in them, and it was across 12 different categories. So you've got QSR, FMCG, apparel, auto, to measure the effectiveness from an earned media perspective. And across all of those programs, for every $1 spent on influencer marketing, about $7 came back in the door from an earned media perspective. And this was different category to category. So an example is for FMCG brands that were targeting young moms, millennial moms, that was higher. It was actually 12-to-1 earned media value to paid media, because a young mom is constantly online, constantly looking at mommy vloggers, very happy to share and retweet and kind of pay into that earned media pool. So it is working. And anecdotally, I can say that in any programs I've been a part of, when we do have that influencer drive traffic to something or get the engagement numbers, it does work, and it is really becoming key to the media mix. So finally, I want to talk about where this is all going, right? Because I recognize in the States, this is part of our everyday vocabulary, and these programs are happening really for most brands out there, especially the brands that are targeting 18 to 34. But for 2016 and 2017, these are the 4 trends that we're seeing. Firstly, the influencers that are working the best online are visualizing it. So that's a lot. So what that means is that, and the 60,000 numbers in there, because our brains process visual imagery and decision trees and listicles and things like that a lot quicker than just text. So we always tell influencers, don't just do text-based promotions for us. We need you to create visuals, because it's just more effective. Secondly, live streaming is the new frontier of influencer marketing, I would say. So Periscope, which is a live streaming app that feeds straight into Twitter, is becoming really, really popular. There's a whole talent pool of live streaming influencers, which brands are leveraging. IRL is in real life, of course. That's a really, really popular. This concept of IRL is really, really popular now, because we're bringing influencers on the road. We're putting them in buses, going to conferences. We're having them meet fans face to face. So there's events like StreamCon, VidCon, huge 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 people events that are coming to meet these influencers. Because to a younger demo, they are the Eva Longorias or the George Clooney's of the world. And then finally is co-create it. So not just using influencers to amplify your brand message or to support your marketing campaign, actually creating product with the influencer from the very beginning is becoming just huge. There's an influencer called Bethany Mota in the States. She's all about helping young girls with their confidence, and she's kind of a lifestyle vlogger. She co-created a product line or product extension with Aeropostale, and she brought her viewers on the entire story, from the initial meeting to production to her designing it, and then she launched it, and it sold out within 24 hours. It's one of Aeropostale's most successful launches ever. So really, really interesting area to play in, and really it all comes down to this one concept of a brand. It is no longer what we tell the consumer it is. It's what your consumers are telling each other it is. So the opportunity to leverage influencers to get there is now. So thank you.
I'm glad you woke up and started listening. Before I take 1 or 2 questions from Jonathan, just on the question on the issue of influencing, when you finished rubbing the person beside you, pat yourself on the back. Because of your attendance here, 300 delegates, we are now the biggest sponsorship summit in Europe, probably the 2nd biggest in the world. We don't know about China, as we know. We're not sure we can believe the figures there or not, but round of applause, the biggest number of delegates ever at a sponsorship summit. Two questions for Jonathan. I know we could be here till 6 o'clock. I just found that fascinating. But we'll take 2 questions because I know the evening is getting on. So we have microphones. So anybody prepared to get involved in a zipline video?
Thank you.
We have one here, and oh, sorry, yeah. So lady over there first, and then.
Thanks, Jonathan. I'm Kelly from PSG Sponsorship. I'd just like to get your view on Snapchat and the rise of it, and have you seen it overtake other social media channels in the US, and what do you predict for here?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think it's a really, really important one to address, actually, because Snapchat is overtaking a lot of the social platforms for that demo, for that 13 to 17-year-old demo, which I'm obsessed with bringing up because they are the ones that are using this. So a good way to show how Snapchat fits in is I'll talk you through a typical week of a influencer. So on a Monday, an influencer will go out and see what's trending in pop culture, what's happening in the news, what their audience is going to be interested in. On a Tuesday, they'll shoot their video based on that, and they'll start editing the video. On a Wednesday, they'll tease the video on it's usually Vine and Snapchat, to get their audience excited. On a Thursday, at the same time every week, they'll anchor their video on YouTube and launch it. On a Friday, they amplify it through Facebook and Twitter. on a Saturday, they community manage all day, and on a Sunday they look at the data and analytics. So that's just a typical week. That's not, of course, that's not everyone, but Snapchat is part of that mix. And there's influencers who are big on YouTube who are now going to Snapchat, definitely. And there's also Snapchat influencers which are exclusively dedicated to Snapchat, so they don't actually have presence on other platforms. So it's becoming increasingly important. There's rumors that Snapchat's going to get into e-commerce soon. I think they are. I think, you know, the indications are there. And then another interesting point from a brand on Snapchat is that there are the Snapchat channels which you can get involved in with as well. What sucks about Snapchat, though, to be honest, for a brand is there's no data and analytics shown yet. So you actually have to trust the creator. The creator themselves can get the view count and they can get all that. So the way influencers are showing the results to brands is actually they're having to screen grab their own analytics dashboard because no one else has access yet. So hopefully that will change. Hopefully that answers your question.
Justin?
Just as a thought, is it fair to say that what you're describing are just modern celebrities?
I mean, look, to an extent, yeah, right? This isn't brand new. Like I showed, but what's interesting to note is that when there's a new medium or a new communications platform, historically, the talent on those new mediums are leveraged by brands. So when theatre was launched, the theatre stars were used. When radio was launched, the radio guys were used. When TV came along, colour TV, and then movie came along. So it's just because these platforms are so new, it is that these influencers are being called the new wave of celebrities. So yeah, you're definitely not wrong.
Okay, we'll leave it there, folks. Thanks again. A round of applause for JonathanCloonan. Thank you.